Welcome to Heal the World Show podcast, brought to you by the Healing Institute. The Healing Institute is an online worldwide hub of holistic practitioners, and we are bringing health and healing to the world. Our practitioners look at what is going on with you, what the root cause is, whatever the issue might be. And so they really can find out what issue you might have and how we can help you with that. So the Healing Institute, I've been, doing health and healing and holistic ways of being well for over 30 years, and I know that it works. And I created the Healing Institute because I'm just passionate about educating people about health and healing and how you can be your very best self. Now, the reason that this is so important to me is because we did have a tragedy in our family a few years ago. My mother passed away at the age of 61, and it was due to complications of a medication she'd been on for over 20 years. And at no time was it ever mentioned to her that this medication, being on it for that length of time, could affect her kidneys. So unfortunately, she passed away on the 15th of December. I was 5 months pregnant with my son. And I say it's not only a tragedy that she died so young, but my children never got to meet their grandmother. And as I'm looking forward to being a grandmother soon, I know how important that is. And I don't want that happening for any other families. So that's why I'm so passionate about creating health and healing and education around that for people. And then each week I invite someone with their area of expertise to come and talk to. We just have a conversation around that. November, I always give each month a little bit of a theme. And so we've called November Navigating November, which I think is pretty good as we make our way into December. And today I'm just so delighted to have Jacqueline Wells with us talking about fear intelligence because it's a subject we don't talk about. I think we've been taught to run away. If it's a fearful thing, we run away from it. And so today is our 115th episode. We've been doing this for 2.5 years. So I'm just so delighted, Jacqueline, to have you here today talking about fear intelligence.
Well,
Welcome.
I'm delighted to be here, Parmelia. Thank you so much for inviting me. And I always am ready to talk about fear intelligence, as you know.
Absolutely. So this is something you've just created, the fear framework. And you've been an author, you're a speaker, you've done many things in your life. So tell us a little bit about why this is so important. Why fear intelligence?
So I've been writing about living fear issues for 20 years. But in reality, I've been doing it my entire lifetime.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I'm not shy about my age. I'm 74 years old now. And so I look at
Congratulations.
this and I go,
The
okay,
70s
so
are
what?
great, aren't they?
The 70s are wonderful. I'm definitely rolling in my own power at this point in time, which is a nice change from many decades beforehand. And those many decades beforehand were very fear oriented, fear-based thinking, fear-based behaviors, lots of ways in which I self-sabotaged, lots of ways in which my limitations were really revolved around the issue of fear. But 20 years ago, when I eventually became an executive coach, I actually worked on this idea of how do I help people, first of all, to be fearless.
Hmm.
And then over this last couple of years, I began to understand that it wasn't about becoming fearless, it was about becoming fear intelligent.
Ah,
And
yes.
the intelligence piece was really about how do you use fear as a signal, not just
Hmm.
noise and not something to avoid. Because as you pointed out in your introduction, many people look at the word fear and they don't want to utter it. I don't want to
Exactly.
tell you that I have fears. But what are we talking about here? We're talking about a simple emotion. It's
That's
an
right.
emotion that's created according to a perceived threat. Now, I just want your audience to understand this. It's a
Mhm.
perceived threat. It's not real. Nine
No.
times out of 10, we're not being threatened. but our brain connects to that perceived threat. And of course, the emotion that arises is fear. But here's what's happening with every single emotion that we have in our bodies. What do we need? We need a story. We need a
Yes.
story to back that emotion up. Why am I feeling what I'm feeling? And it can be sadness, it can be joy, it can be fear, it can be anger. But you always have to question, what is that telling me?
I
Because
love
if
that. I love the fact that you actually need to then understand why you're feeling that feeling, why you're feeling that emotion.
That's
Beautiful.
exactly right. And, as I said, it doesn't have to be just the emotion of fear, but it is a piece that needs to be recognized as, what story am I telling myself? And then if we realize that the story you're telling yourself doesn't have any real proof to it, i.e., I don't have any evidence that the worst case scenario will happen, or that someone is judging me, or that if I get up and I speak publicly, people are going to think I'm terrible. These are all the ways in which we undermine our own best efforts. And there's a
Hmm.
lot more to it than that. People who seek validation all the time
Yeah.
to tell me that I'm good, tell me I'm doing okay. That's all fear-based behavior
Oh,
right there.
I've thought a lot about this. Someone a few years back told me that, or her concept was when fear shows up, it's God telling us to course correct, which I kind of like. I don't know about that, but I
And
was
yeah, I mean,
I've been
yeah,
thinking about, I think about this fairly often. When I feel fear for whatever reason, I do ask myself, okay, what is this all about? Do you think, is there any validation of the fact that we were raised with parents and grandparents that lived in a fear-based society? I mean, not to say
100%.
that we're not fearful now these
Yeah,
days, but the
yeah.
war, the depression.
Yeah,
Oh,
100%. A lot of our fear-based behaviors were learned.
mhm,
And I'll tell you a little personal story. And like you, my mother died at the age of 61. And there was a very good reason for that. She had lived a life that had, you know, alcoholic husband,
mm,
violent at times. And definitely the stress, I think, is what ultimately killed
right.
her at the end of the day. He was at that point dying of cancer himself. He died a year later. But I grew up in a household where it was not just poverty that was
Mm,
the ruling piece. My father was a dock worker. My mother worked in various factories around the town. And when he got drunk, he'd come home and he'd want to lay into somebody.
mhm.
And I was the eldest of three.
Oh
And
my
because I
goodness.
was the eldest of three, I got most of it. And
Hmm.
I remember at the age of three, hiding under the table,
Hmm.
trying to stay quiet so he wouldn't hear me. When I gave my TED talk, I told the story of sitting in a wardrobe and trying not to breathe too heavily, but I was very badly asthmatic as a
Mm,
child. And wheezing was really a big deal for me. So I'm
right.
sitting in this wardrobe trying to stay really quiet and wheezing at the same time because my father's looking for me because I
Mm,
had done something wrong. And according to him. And that was the fear patterns that were imbued in me. But
of
when you look
course.
back at your parents, you
Hmm.
realize that they also inherited someone
Yes.
else's anger.
Yes. Most
They
definitely.
they inherited other people's disappointment. They
Hmm.
inherited the limitations of how those individuals who raised them were feeling about life in general, and they just kept passing it along. And one of the things that I'm most proud of, and people say to me, "What's your greatest accomplishment?" It's not all the books I've written or the ways in which I've gone out in the world and done pretty amazing things at times. It's about my children. I was able
Hmm.
to change the pattern of what family means in one generation. But what it took was for me to do the hard work of
Yeah.
understanding my own fear-based patterns in order for these children to grow into reasonably healthy adults,
Yeah.
which they all are at this point in time.
Well, and that was just such a fabulous story. I love that story, because we do have to do it as the generations, of, one of the reasons I think my mom kind of died at such an early age is she didn't have cancer, but she almost gave up. It's like she gave up on life. She had
Mm,
had abusive situations happening in her life, and not from my father, but from her from her birth family. And she, there was just so many things that I think it was enough. She couldn't cope anymore. And so I was very, very conscientious about when I was having my children, how I didn't want to pass on those fearful things to my children. And thank goodness, I don't think, I mean, I'm sure they have fears, but
yeah,
they're not the ones that I gave them. So,
yeah. Well, that's kind of what I look at, and as I said to one of my older ones recently, in fact, you know, really for all the children, I said, you did not get the best of me when you were young because I was going through my own dramas and my own transformational processes, which we know doesn't happen overnight.
oh heavens, no.
It's, here's the thing about, being fear intelligence. Fear is data. It is simply information that you have to pay attention to. And we're going to talk about the acronym I have
Yes.
for fear shortly. But the idea for me was that if we can examine our fears, and I said it this way in one of the keynotes I gave. I said, think of it like a smoke alarm in your kitchen. It's
Hmm.
going off, and all you want to do is shut it up. So if you're getting really desperate, you'll remove the battery and leave yourself without any protection whatsoever if there should be a fire in your kitchen. And that's a lot like fear.
It is very
Happens
much.
with
Great
our
acronym.
fear is we
Mhm.
avoid it, we distract from it, we run from it. We've
Yeah.
heard the acronym of fear is false expectations appearing real. Again, what is that? That's the stories you tell
Yeah.
yourself.
That's
So
a great analogy. I might use that in the future if you're okay with
yes,
that.
yeah, 100%. So, when I talk about fear and the analogy of fear, or the acronym, I should say,
Mhm.
for fear, it stands for this. Number one is face. Face it.
Face
Be
it.
aware of what that fear is telling you. Take the moment. So when you go into a fear reaction, you need to take that 90-second pause. You need to step back for a moment and just ask yourself, why am I feeling what I'm feeling? Have I felt this before? And if I felt this before, what was it that started it and where
Mhm.
did this take me? These are all exploratory questions, which is the next part of the acronym, explore. And when we explore our stories, when we can actually see that there's no truth in many of those stories, or that we inherited those stories from someone else,
Yeah. Yeah.
then we need to do the healing journey of changing the narrative, which falls into the ACT part of the acronym. And ACT simply means once you recognize the false stories that you are feeding yourself and the false ways in which you are showing up, thinking that that's how it's supposed to be. Once you start to know that there is a different truth to that, you must take action. And
Yes.
those actions are about changing the stories and the behaviors. None of this is easy, by the way, because then
And
you
it
get,
doesn't happen overnight.
and it definitely doesn't happen overnight. And then you get into the RISE part of the acronym. And the RISE part is meet the challenge. Have the courage to say, I am uncomfortable and I may be deeply uncomfortable with the pattern that is showing up for me
Mhm.
right now. But I'm willing to make the changes necessary. And I'm willing to heal the wounds that have been part of my life for a very long time.
And that's, I think, one of the most critical pieces is to meet that challenge and to realize it is just a challenge and
Yes.
that we can overcome it and not run away from it. And that's, I think, the training that we've had from our parents and our grandparents was to run away from the fear, not, to run away from the emotion, the feeling of whatever that fear might be, and not
Yeah.
face it. And
Yeah.
so, which has caused, as we know, all sorts of issues,
Mm.
mental and emotional issues. And
Well, like, yeah,
yeah,
I definitely
generationally.
relate to that. It's generational. I mean, I wrote a
Mhm.
book called When the Crow Sings, and it is about three generations of women giving birth to children outside of marriage and how it spills over from generation to generation until someone decides to change.
Mhm.
And I tell the story of my grandmother who had two children before she married. I tell the story of my mother who had two children before she married. And then my own story of giving my first child up for adoption at the age of 20. And I talk about that story in the book Fear Intelligence also, because at the age of 20, I'm lying in a hospital bed and I'm supposed to give a child up for adoption. And I
Mhm.
can't do it. I can't
Mhm.
do it. I'm emotionally a wreck and I'm in fear. I want to take her home, except I don't have a home to go to. So I end up sharing a house and a room in return for some babysitting of an autistic child, which was very ironical because my youngest brother was born severely retarded.
Mhm.
And so we had him in the house for a long time, and that was, again, part of my early childhood
Right.
experience. But after 3 months of having my daughter at home one night, I was ready to do some damage, and my anger and my frustration and my fear took over. And I called the social worker immediately and I said, you have to take her away. You have to give her to a family who will love her, who will take care of her. I can't do this. This is not my life. And it was one of the hardest things that I could ever
Oh,
do.
I can only imagine. Yeah.
But the so much of this was fear driven.
Yeah.
And, at the time, yeah, I didn't know who the father was. I mean, talk about looking for love in all the wrong places, which I was very good at. I mean, I left home at the age of 16 and I moved from Edinburgh, Scotland to London. And when I first moved, I didn't have a job. I didn't have a home. I had nothing. I had like, a couple of pounds in my pocket at the time. And I had to figure that one out. And that's really been one of the stories of my life. It's like you might be in desperate situations, but you'll figure it
You
out.
can figure it out.
And you
Yes.
can figure it out. And that's when people fall back into, well, I can't do anything about it. Well, you want to be a victim? Or you want to be a thriver. And I call it thriving because you're not just a survivor, you're
You're
also
thriving. Yeah.
thriving.
Yeah. I love that
That's
terminology. Yeah.
that's a really good one to
Surviving.
think about. But as I said, I come to this work simply because I've lived it. I know what this looks and feels like. I know
Mhm.
what it does to you. And so when I talk to my clients, they'll go, "You really seem to understand this." And I go, "Yeah, because I've already been there, done
Yeah.
that. And I
Having
know
had
how,
that personal experience makes all
yeah,
the difference in the world. I find the same with, with my clients that I'm talking to about their emotions. And I, of course, am doing body code work, so I'm talking about their emotions that could be trapped in the subconscious. They're not even consciously aware of them.
that's another
But
good
I've
point.
had I've had my journey as well that I've had to learn
Yeah,
that. So let's
yeah.
talk about your acronym for fear. We did
Well,
mention it just briefly. FACE.
so we got face, explore, act, and rise. These
And
are
those
the
are all
four
really
elements.
positive, which I really love. They're very
Yes,
positive and um, there's something that you can, it's not just words. You can actually get a hold of it and really do something about it. Because as you mentioned earlier, the facing it, looking at what that was, and then exploring what's going on here, asking questions, you know,
yes.
um, I've always been curious. I've always asked questions. I say sometimes what you got into trouble for was as a child probably ends up being your gift. And I
And
was
this
always
this is a
asking
problem.
questions.
And this is a problem because what happens is as a child, you're always asking questions, but in schools, you're finally learning, put your hand down because you ask too many questions. So the curiosity gets knocked out of you. I
Yeah.
have a big section in the book that talks about curiosity and the need for curiosity
So
because people
important.
tell you they're looking for answers. And I go, no, you're not looking for answers. You're looking for better questions that will unlock the answers because the
Mhm.
answer's already within you. But to your point about curiosity, curiosity gets knocked out of us. I mean, they've done
Yeah.
studies on this that children ask questions, hundreds of times a day
Yeah.
when they're learning. And then after a while in school, they start to get silent. And then they get more silent as they go forward. And then they become more insecure because I might ask the wrong question, that I will look stupid when I ask that
Yeah.
question. How many times have you sat in a an event where somebody says, bring me a question, talk to me about what are you thinking about? And you're sitting there thinking, well, I've got this question, but boy, I'm pretty sure that if I ask this, it's going to look really stupid, or it's going to look like I really don't know what I'm talking about, or it's not going to come out clear. And so you keep silent.
Yeah.
You keep silent. And in the workplace, this is a huge issue because too many people remain silent instead of speaking up, even when they see things that are going off the rails
And
and they know better.
corporate work, I think, encourages that. It doesn't encourage you to put your hand up and ask questions.
And that's
I
my
lived, I
point.
worked for 25 years in a department with the government of Canada, which is very much like corporate America.
Mhm.
And, we weren't encouraged. And then when we were encouraged to ask questions and to be on a project where we're trying to make things better, what happened to the project? It got turfed. So, it's like, well, really, why did you bother asking me? Because
Yes. Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
just a waste of
And this
time.
is unfortunately true too many times,
Hmm.
because the status quo does not want to be disrupted.
Yeah.
And that's the bigger problem, is that status quo does not want to be
Yeah.
disrupted. And so we look at this in terms of our lives, our comfort zones, our so-called
Mhm.
comfort zones, which frequently are our discomfort zones.
Yeah.
But what we're trying to do is maintain status quo. I talk about the four professional fears in this book. And I say the number one is inadequacy. I'm not worthy. I'm not deserving. I'm not good enough. I'm not respected. I'm not valued. You
Mhm.
can put any not word you want in front of that type of
Yeah.
verb,
Mhm.
and you have fear operating right there. So
Absolutely.
there's the inadequacy piece. And I certainly felt that way for a very long time. Then the next part of that is the rejection.
Hmm.
We all want to feel like we're acceptable.
That's true. Yeah.
And that is really, I want to be a nice person. How many women specifically grow
Oh
up
my
with being
gosh.
the
Yeah.
good girl?
Yeah.
And good girl is not supposed to do whatever it was. And that was never my story. I was like the exact opposite. You want trouble, I'll create trouble. And a funny story, my 15-year-old at one point comes to me and she goes, I'd like to really do something, that really pisses you off. She said, but you've already done it. So I don't know why I would want to do it. I was like, yeah, okay, fair enough. But to the point I'm making
I
here
have a
is,
similar story with my children because
yeah,
I was pretty much a rebel as a teenager. And I said to my son one day, who was trying to get away with something he thought that he would got away with, and I said, there is nothing that you could do that I have not done. So
yeah,
don't
yeah.
try it.
So, when the people look at us now and we're going, well, these old broads, what do they know? It's like, yeah, we know a hell of a lot
Yeah.
more than you think, you know.
We've been around the block a few times.
Just a few times, exactly. And we have the certificates to prove it.
Yeah.
So,
And the t-shirt.
yeah, and the t-shirt, be fearless, see where it gets you. That used to be my slogan. But to the point I'm making here is that we really do have to look very carefully at where we are silencing ourselves, where we hold back on making decisions, where
Yes.
we really get in because we're afraid of that rejection. So let me just finish with this one. Uncertainty. Many
Hmm.
people live their life wanting guarantees in life. That's the safety piece.
Yeah.
It's an illusion again. There's no such thing. We don't have certainty in anything. And I'm a great believer in the Stoic philosophy, which is that, uncertainty brings opportunity. It's got
Absolutely.
possibilities in it. And unless we're willing to embrace that discomfort of not knowing the outcome of something, we never try. And here's the other thing, I hate the word try. Yoda said, do or do not do, don't try. I mean, this is paraphrasing it, but, when we use the word try, what we're saying is, I don't believe I can do this.
Yes, that's right.
Instead of saying, I'm going to learn, and maybe in the learning, I'll find out that that's not exactly what I wanted to do. So that's a different thing from, oh, I'll try. It's like, no, do or do not do.
That's simply it. So the uncertainty piece is part of our lives. There's no guarantees. And we all know that, but yet we look for them and we try to maintain that steady approach to life. Let's face it, too many people want to stay in that zone
Yeah.
and they live,
And
there's
because
nowhere
it
to
feels
go.
safe to them.
That's
But
exactly,
really, something's gonna show up that's gonna totally shift
yeah.
that
And then there's
that
the loss
safety net.
piece. The loss is the last of the four professional fears. We fear loss.
Mhm.
So what do we fear? Failure. So therefore, ask anybody, usually high level executives, what's your greatest fear? Failure.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So let's look at failure. It's a choice, an expectation, or a decision that did not go the way you had planned. That's it. That is all failure is. And it's a learning, it's a lesson, and it's a way for you to say, well, that didn't work. Let's try something else. But instead of which you spend your life trying desperately not to fail, putting all the stress on yourself to make sure it's all perfectly done. And by the way, perfectionism is another thing we touch on in the book because perfectionism is all tied into I'm not good enough.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And,
Abs
perfectionism is the enemy of excellence because nothing is ever good enough.
No, no. And so doing our very best is what we want to achieve, regardless of what that might be and how that might show up. It's
Yeah.
knowing in our hearts that we've done the very best that we possibly could do, which will then
It's
gives us, I believe, the confidence that we can continue.
And let's talk about confidence for a second, because
Sure.
confidence is really, what is confidence? It's an ability to change our thinking and behavior so that we show up knowing this is the right
Yeah.
thing for me. And that's the confidence factor right there. And
Yes, absolutely.
I'm often asked, how do I get to be more confident? And I go, you do something that makes you uncomfortable. And then you do it again and again and again until finally one day you look back and you go, I don't feel that way anymore. I don't
Yeah.
do that
I
anymore.
know I can do this.
And I know I can do this, people who want validation for their existence, for instance, that's a fundamental belief that I'm really not good enough. And I need other people to tell me that. And then one day, once you get over that hump, you suddenly go, I don't really care what other people think.
Yes.
I don't, and I certainly feel that way at this age of my existence.
I think some a little bit of wisdom around that also it
There's
helps
no
when
question,
you're aging, right?
But if you can give people help by listening to what this conversation is doing and, get them to understand that you don't need to be 70 plus years of age before you finally get it.
No,
You can
you
have
can
this
get
at
it
any
earlier.
age. You can have it at any age. I mean, I've worked with millennials, I've worked with Gen Zers, I've worked with a whole bunch of different age demographics. It's all the same issues. And when they get it, they're suddenly their professional life improves, their relationships improve. I'm working with a couple right now. Both of them are doing one of my programs, the Fear Intelligence Framework program, and I'm coaching the husband because their relationship is being challenged. And this is very much about their fear patterns and
Mhm.
understanding that how they're communicating through these fear patterns. And that's what the program is designed to do, to help them do that. And again, it's all in the book as well.
Oh, perfect. Well, we want to mention your book,
Yes,
Fear Intelligence, and people can get it on Amazon. So that's where they
yes,
can go. And to connect with you, it's Jacqueline at fearintelligence.co.
yes.
So I'll also put that in all of our show notes so people know that. Well, this has just been delightful. I'm talking about this subject, which I do really, really enjoy talking about this subject, just to shed some light on the fact that, we don't need to live in a fear-based uh, way at all. Certainly, and certainly not in a fear-based society. So thank you again, so very much, Jacqueline, for coming to be part of my podcast on American Thanksgiving. I greatly appreciate that.
Mhm.
So we just want to people to know that our vision is to to create this community of health practitioners, as I mentioned earlier, that we look at you individually and uniquely. Whatever you need, we will create for you so that you can we can help you with whatever issue you might have, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual. And our motto here at the Healing Institute is service with love, and we have a big ask. We would like you to tell your community, tell your family, tell your colleagues about the Healing Institute and all the amazing practitioners that we have here that can help you on your healing journey. So thank you again, Jacqueline, for being part of our podcast today. And we'll be talking to you again soon. All right.
Excellent. Thank you.